What is up, everybody? Inside Highmark Stadium, a couple hours after the Buffalo Bills improved to 6-5, putting an absolute beatdown on the New York Jets. 32-6 is the final score, and the way that this Jets offense plays football in 2023, it never really felt that close. This is the Shout Buffalo Bills football podcast, brought to you as always by Tops Friendly Markets. Happy Thanksgiving. We are about to start Thanksgiving week and prepare for a Thanksgiving like no other with unbelievable savings on everything you need to create a memorable holiday meal. Need a juicy golden turkey? How about fresh cranberries for cranberry sauce that's bursting with tangy sweetness? Tops has got it all and more. As you plan your Thanksgiving menu, make Tops your destination for savings. All right, Ryan, we have so much to get into in this game. An offensive explosion of 32 points. And I can't really overemphasize how impressive that 32 points is, even though I predicted it, which, I might have had a defensive touchdown baked into that prediction, but whatever. That's beside the point. This is a Jets defense and a Jets team that hasn't given up 32 points or more in a game since December 5th, 2021, almost 2 calendar years ago. What the Bills did in this game today partly was in part, I think, because of what's going on in their offensive side of the ball for the Jets, and we'll get into that in a minute. But in terms of a jumping off point for the Bills refinding the magic on their offense, we'll get into Joe Brady today, and making a run here with a very daunting schedule. This was the exact recipe. This is what they needed to do, and they went into this game today and they did it.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a huge first test pass for this offense. Going against a Jets team that's one of the best defenses in the league, like you mentioned, but also a Jets defense that has given Josh Allen and this team fits the past 2 years. And you could see the frustration at times in this game coming from the Jets defense, probably partly due to the ineptness of their offense, the fact that they're on the field continually, the fact that the Bills are able to continue building leads. But from the first drive on, whether it was the short field or when they had those long fields, it felt like the Bills were moving the ball consistently, getting up and down the field. They had to settle for some field goals early on, but eventually those turned to touchdowns. And by the end of the game, I mean, the route was on. So a huge first test pass in terms of maybe the toughest defense left on their schedule going into, today and the rest of the season.
When you see 4.3 yards per carry for James Cook, it doesn't really jump off the screen when you're looking at the box score. But his performance in this game to me, and I wrote it in my instant observations, was so much more important than the final stat line really shows. And I did a little digging before Buffalo Kickoff Live this morning because I was going to make Cook my player to watch in this game, and I wanted to see how the Bills performed in games where he ran well, and in games that he rushed for 60 yards or more this season. Going into this game, the Bills were 4-1, and the one loss was the Denver game, which, if 12 men on the field doesn't happen, they win that game. They're 5-0. This is another game that he goes over 60. And they were important runs, Ryan, because how they were doing it, how the offense was set up, the way that he was running the ball. Sean McDermott mentioned his pad level, and just seeing a different response from James Cook over the last couple of games. It's really important. And in a game like this, to have the kind of balance that this offense had. We're going to talk a lot about Josh Allen in the next couple of minutes, but, Latavius Murray, 10 for 35, some important carries baked in there as well. Ty Johnson, 3 for 11, but it was the reception going down the sideline for a touchdown. The running back trio has really made an impression this week and over the last couple in the Bills offense. And I think Ty Johnson, his emergence here late in the year, that could delay any idea or any call up for playoff Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, absolutely. And starting first and foremost with James Cook as a pure runner, I loved in the first drive some of the patience that he showed on carries, Matt, where it looked like there was nowhere to run. He didn't panic. He kind of waited for something to open up. Then he kind of hit the Jets and he would get 4, 5, 6 yards on a carry. And that patience, I think, is
He hit the
something
Jets,
that
huh? He hit the
yeah,
Jets.
that's right.
There
See?
you go, Talbot.
Just one of those things that I think he's learned in the last calendar year or the last year plus of being a pro, where at Georgia, a lot of the time those lanes were there for him and he could just take off and go. he's learning these little things as it goes on. And in terms of the backs as runners and pass catchers, big time shout out to Joe Brady in terms of the way that he utilized all three of these backs. First and foremost, the touchdown reception from James Cook was schemed up perfectly by Brady. Wide open play. Same thing with that 4th and 1 touchdown pass by Ty Johnson. Again, another easy concept. The way that they ran this play, he was open, easy first down, and then Johnson did the rest. I was telling the Shout Insiders tonight that had to feel good for Johnson. Johnson was under contract with the Jets. He had re-signed with them this year, tore his pec working out at home. They tell him to get the surgery, and after he gets the surgery, they release him. And he said he went through some dark, dark days after that. So to be able to be on the field in this game and score a big touchdown to really put it out of put it out of any kind of comeback for the Jets, I'm sure that felt really good for Johnson.
Yeah, and I think that's a good time as any to really dive into this Joe Brady first game and what our impressions of are of his situation. And we got a cool super chat before we even went live here. Came from Michael Duell over on YouTube. Did the rhythm come from Brady or Josh getting a haircut? LOL. And Josh did have a fresh new fade. The semi mullet is what I called it before the game is gone. But Brady's week, like, what a tumultuous, stressful ordeal this must have been for Joe Brady. And, he tweeted 1-0 after the game. And what's funny is people are reacting to it in a large rate here in the last hour or so. He does this after every time the Bills win. That's just kind of his deal. And, Sean McDermott said what he saw from Joe Brady early in the week was the leadership that he showed, assembling the offensive staff together, getting everybody on the same page, bringing an energy, right? That's been the buzzword every single day to the building. And it kind of morphed into this rallying cry for this team that I think got the message. And, bringing some fun back to the building, finding a way to have a little bit more fun. You saw the fun play out on the field as they were celebrating the touchdowns, and Josh Allen just looking like the version of the player that he's been. And, I think Joe Brady deserves a lot of credit for that. I know it can't be an easy situation knowing how much everybody loved Ken Dorsey in the building. And many of the players have talked about that, coaches as well. But it's one of those things where Brady just seemed to bring out the confidence back in this offense with the way that he called the plays, the way that this game went, Ryan. I can't overstate enough how important of a performance this is against the opponent, how good the Jets defense are. It was such a chippy game because teams don't do this to the Jets. That's why they were getting so frustrated with it. That's why Deion Dawkins was in a scuffle with some guys in the tunnel. Ed Oliver, I believe, was involved as well after the game because, on the road at the Meadowlands, teams don't do this to the Jets.
No, it doesn't usually happen. And to answer Michael's question, 51%, I would say Brady, 49% Allen. Allen taking on the personality of his OC. When it was Dorsey had that longer, shaggy hair. Allen does it. Brady kind of has the Talbot haircut, very short and to the point. So Allen went a little bit shorter too. But in all seriousness, the offense did look like they were having fun out there today, Matt. And some of the things that we were looking for from Joe Brady, sure enough, we right out of the gate, we saw the motion, pre-snap motion, Stephon Diggs going back and forth early on in this game. We saw a lot of the play action bootlegs. Play action was a big part of his, play calling in Carolina. Being under center, we saw a lot of that today too. So a lot of positive signs here early on. And perhaps what I liked most was the way that he utilized and attacked the middle of the field in terms of his play calls to Josh Allen. And if that read to Diggs wasn't there, you had Kincaid in the middle, or you had your backs in the middle. You had other guys that you could utilize. And going back to our preview show, we had a whole conversation. Does this need to be a Stephon Diggs game? And I said it doesn't, because this is a Jets team that is terrible on offense. And it didn't need to be a Stephon Diggs game today. They had other people step up. We already talked about Ty Johnson. You had Khalil Shakir with the longest touchdown reception of the year so far in the NFL. based on what he did today. You had obviously a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball step up too. Leonard Floyd, Rasul Douglas, more than anyone else. But it was a total group effort. But offensively, this team, this offense was in a flow, which they seem to struggle to do under Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, I mean the middle of the field here. I just brought up the next gen chart, and you look. I'm counting them like in between the hashes, just in between the hashes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his 32 throws. You could probably toss in 7, 8, 9, probably 9 in that range, and so that's, to your point, really important. And you saw the short area of the field is where they really chose to attack. And Mitch Morris leaned into what we talked about on the preview show when we were talking about it to him in his locker, about how it's not just a quarterback and play caller deal when it comes to boredom and not like leaning into that part of it. It's for the offensive line too. I mean, there's certain things that they want to do in games. There's certain lulls in the offense where they got to fight against that as well. But you have to know who you're playing, and this was a complete flip from what we saw them do against the Jets in week 1, because you can't play that style against them. If you try to attack down the field over and over, the big plays are never going to come. And I felt like, to Josh Allen's credit, the biggest part of this game was taking what was there, taking a couple chances. I mean, listen, the Khalil Shakir touchdown pass was a bit of a chance. If Sauce Gardner is one step further in front, maybe he makes a play on that ball. I don't think so. I know Jets fans were in my mentions when I said that Khalil Shakir absolutely schooled Sauce Gardner, but I'm sorry. When a 5th-round draft pick in the second season takes it to the house and you're the man in coverage off the jump, I'm going to give you a little bit of a heckle there. I mean, that is a huge play for Shakir, and Sauce Gardner had a chance to make a play on it. And bottom line, he didn't. And he likes to kind of, play the game with, the brashness. And I like it. I actually am a fan of Sauce Gardner just from a football sense, watching him play the game. But he got beat on that play, and he couldn't even get back in the play. And, on a play when Khalil Shakir said after the game that it felt like he was kind of running in slow motion, which has to feel even worse for Gardner and the Jets.
Yeah, if Gardner had the same kind of hustle that he did going to the locker room and getting on Twitter or X, he probably would have made a play on that ball. He gets beaten by Khalil Shakir, and yes, it's his own defense, but he was the man closest in coverage. He went for the interception. And then after that, his effort, he kind of slowed down to a jog at one point. And when Shakir made that last cut, it gave him a chance to get back into the picture. If he's running full speed, he probably tackles Shakir. But instead, by the time he gets back in, it's Dalton Kincaid coming in with a hip check that pretty much took out all 3 Jets defenders as Shakir ran to the end zone. So some much needed, or so much warranted, I guess, criticism for Sauce Gardner in terms of this guy that is generally an elite cornerback. He gets called for a defensive holding. He gets called for a personal foul for suplexing Stephon Diggs well after a play. He was one of those players that lost his cool because of the way the Bills were able to move the ball up and down on this team all night.
All right, we got to get into Josh Allen here quickly. And I feel bad that we've gone
Lost you there for a minute.
and let's see here, 15 minutes almost on this podcast. We haven't touched on the D again. Jared penalty earlier today. Did you lose me for a second there?
Yeah. Yep. I got you now. Maybe.
Did you lose me for a second there? I bet.
Yeah. You've been a little choppy.
You got me back?
Yep.
Yeah. Why don't you go and talk for a second? I'm going to go on a different internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Matt gets back in here, we'll kind of give our not final thoughts on the offense, but before we shift gears here, I do want to give some shine though to the defensive side of the ball right now, while I have this opportunity. Rasul Douglas, what a day by this cornerback acquired at the trade deadline by Brandon Beane, gets the early interception. I know he was penalized for pass interference. I thought that was kind of a ticky-tack call where he made a play on the ball and that he has a second interception later in the game. He has a fumble recovery all over the field for this team. The whole defensive line I want to get into here a little bit, but it looks like you are back now, Matt. So Maybe we'll touch upon our final
Am I
thoughts here.
back?
It looks like it. And Josh Allen
Can
in
you
this
hear me? Am I
offense.
breaking up or am I good to go?
You're good to go now.
Dude, the Mac Chronicle says that Matt Parrino got his Wi-Fi at Tops apparently too. Well, if I got my Wi-Fi at Tops, Mac Chronicle, it would be working. All right. Because everything works at Tops Friendly Markets.
Right.
Bam. Nailed that transition. And here's another thing. I'm at Highmark Stadium. So it's the Bills Wi-Fi that's not working. So boom, roasted. Anyway, moving on. Let's get into Josh Allen here. He was sensational today. I mean, one of the most impressive games watching him work in this one. Finished his 20 of 32, 63%, 275, 3 touchdowns in the pick on the Hail Mary. That probably kept him from a much nicer quarterback rating in this one. Funny little side note, Zach Wilson, as bad as ever, gets benched. Thomas Morstead, the punter, had the best passer rating on the fake punt. Really, really bad situation for the Jets at quarterback. But for me with Allen, it feels like it's important to know that you can kind of go through struggles or bad periods and find a way to flush it and move on to another section of what you're trying to do as a player. And, he looked really comfortable today. And that's something that we haven't seen a lot of Josh Allen over the last couple of weeks. It's just that comfort level, knowing that you go out there and make plays. I felt like that things were clicking early on. I think you got to give Joe Brady a bit of credit for that as well, being that this is his first game. But we're going to get a chance to see how much it kind of extends into the next couple of weeks because the challenges get more difficult. And the guy on the other side, like you don't get to play Zach Wilson every week. Now, you also don't have to play against the Jets defense every week. And we know that the Eagles defense hasn't been as good this season as in years past. The Chiefs have been. And then obviously you have the Dallas Cowboys on the other end of that. But a really tough stretch. But this is what they needed from Allen to kind of run themselves into that stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. The one interception, like you said, came on that Hail Mary into the wind before halftime. I wouldn't put too much stock into that, but anyone that didn't watch the game will see it. Oh, another, turnover for Allen. He was very good with the ball in terms of taking what was given to him, not forcing it in. The one deep ball that he did attempt, obviously, to Shakir worked out in his favor, but he limited those throws. He limited those risky plays, and it paid off for him. And although the Josh Allen runs for the most part today did not work because there were a few design QB runs drawn up, I like seeing them in there because it gives defenses something to think about. Just like the running play there by Deontay Hardy, the jet sweep, it went for a loss of yards, and some of these Josh Allen runs went for little to no gain. But it's another wrinkle now that defenses have to account for that. Okay, well, the Bills tried this, or the Bills are going to roll this out. They're going to let Josh Allen use his legs a little bit more. They're going to finally utilize players X, Y, and Z. This was a very promising performance from Allen down on offense in Joe Brady's debut.
Let's get into the defensive side of the ball here. And I think the best place to start is Leonard Floyd, and a guy that continues to be the most important offseason addition for the Buffalo Bills, because if you look across that defensive line, Von Miller is still not all the way back. And honestly, that's putting it kindly. I mean, he's looked like a shell of himself. And you have to start to wonder as these weeks tick by and we don't see an uptick in not even production, but just being out there and looking like any version of the guy that, everybody's used to seeing. I mean, I'm looking for him on the stat sheet here. Does he even have a tackle? I don't think he had a tackle again this
I'm not
week.
sure if he did either.
He didn't. He's not even on the stat
No.
sheet. I think I heard a murmur of like 15 snaps in this game. We'll get a clearer look of that tomorrow. But Leonard Floyd, 3 quarterback hits, 2 tackles for a loss, and 2.5 sacks in this game. He now sits at 9.5 sacks on the season. I mean, that is massive production, and we still have 6 games to go in the season. He's going to have a double-digit sack season. Nobody on the Bills had that a year ago. They got him for a fraction of what they should be paying for this kind of sack production. He's just been a problem, and it goes beyond the sack production, because I do agree with, I think it's Robert Saleh who was talking about that this week with Quinn and Williams, about the fact that way too much gets put on sack production and not enough on how much you affect the quarterback and what teams are doing. And you're seeing that consistently, that Floyd is forcing quarterbacks off their mark, forcing them to navigate the pocket and putting a lot of stress on them. And Ed Oliver, ho hum, another sack tonight. He continues to add on his career season as a pass rusher.
Yeah, Leonard Floyd, it almost feels like exactly what the Bills have tried to do throughout this whole regime and this tenure with these veterans that they've signed at times. Early on in this regime, the Trent Murphys and the Mario Addisons, and those guys didn't pay off. But this offseason, they're able to get a Leonard Floyd. I don't want to say late in the summer. I mean, it was late for free agency, though, when they were able to acquire him. And he comes in and he's actually delivering in terms of what the Bills were expecting out of him in this one season. Like you said, 9.5 sacks now. He's in the top 5, I believe, or at least he was going into tonight's game in terms of sack totals. He's generating that pressure. Shaq Lawson was winning today off the line a lot. He's really good against the run, but he's not someone that's a consistent threat. We've seen AJ Epinesa have a career year. Greg Rousseau, when he's been on the healthier side, is doing really well. So you're having a lot of guys on this line step up, but no one has stepped up more from the defensive end position than Leonard Floyd. It was an outstanding signing for this team, a very savvy signing. And you saw what he could do today in terms of generating pressure off the bat, but also finishing those plays and sacking Zach Wilson.
It's funny about Saleh. So did you watch all of Hard Knocks or any of Hard Knocks?
I did not.
Coming off Hard Knocks, Saleh just gave me the wrong vibe. I just didn't love what I saw. He gives me this this vibe about being so cocky for having done absolutely nothing really in the league. And listen, they had a couple of really good defenses in San Francisco, but you're not a Super Bowl winning coordinator coming into this job. It always has felt off with the displaced belief in everything and the cocky, arrogant way that he goes about it. And it's funny. I'm looking at a quote. Our good buddy, Joe Marino, tweeted out his podcast, Locked On Bills. It's a great listen. Always try to put people onto that. And a quote from Robert Saleh where he said, they played a patient style of game. Josh didn't play as much hero ball as we're used to seeing. He was much more decisive. And maybe he didn't mean it like that, but it comes off as this weird kind of shot at him in a game where I thought, Josh, this was a master class against a master defense, because you have to play a certain style. You have to be composed. You have to be controlled. And there was still the big plays in this game, big important plays on third down too, early in the game. And so I think this is an interesting kind of pivot point. And it's interesting too, how far the Bills have come under it, in this era with Josh Allen as the quarterback, away from reactiveness from all these little one-off, what's the word? Feuds, and more so it's not even on their radar. I don't think Josh Allen was even asked about Saleh this week. It doesn't feel like the Jets are on the Bills level, and even in a season where the Bills have been kind of floundering a little bit at points.
Yeah, and that's fair. And, Saleh with the whole embarrassing quarterbacks comment earlier this year. Sometimes after some of these wins, it looks like he's celebrating a playoff victory, and I get it. The Jets defense have carried them to some impressive wins this season, but you're right. They haven't done much, or he hasn't done much here as Jets head coach. Joe Douglas hasn't done much. It wouldn't shock me if they move on from that head coach GM duo in the offseason. But that's a different matter. The Bills kind of came into this game just kind of focused on the game itself, not any of the previous chatter, nothing that, like you said, put them on the radar, although it does seem like Dean Dawkins not a fan of the Jets based on some of the things he said post-game, based on some of the skirmishes he had on the field and in the locker, going to the locker room after the game as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty heated deal, and I'm actually excited because Rich Cimini just put out a video of the exchange about 5 minutes ago. It was from a distance, but apparently you can hear a little bit of the exchange in the tunnel. Deion Dawkins, I mean, it started in the game. I think it was Michael Clemens, right?
Yeah.
Where they had a little bit of a exchange off of a block from Deion's, and then he did his best LeBron James impression, flopped a little bit. And it was physical all game. I mean, there was the Sauce Gardner suplex on Stephon Diggs where Spencer Brown comes flying in and puts a hit on him, back and forth, and then it kind of went into the tunnel as well. But it's kind of good for football too, a little bit, right? Like, it is football at the end of the day. I mean, sometimes when you have a real rival team, there should be a little bit of animosity. And Pops Mafia is asking where he could watch the video from the tunnel. It is Rich Samini, ESPN Jets beat reporter. He just put out a video of it.
And I'll definitely add that to the story that I have up on nyf.com and syracuse.com. But yeah, I mean, divisional matchup, definitely some chippiness in this game. Stephon Diggs getting into it a little bit late in the game. We already mentioned Sauce Gardner with the suplex after the whistle, the Deion Dawkins, Michael Clemens exchange. So it definitely had some chippiness to it. And that's what you expect in these division games.
I'm watching the video as it goes. I mean, it's pretty serious business. I mean, they really got into each other's face, and there's even a better video that at O Livingston TV tweeted as well, and you could kind of see Deion Dawkins and Clemens getting in each other's face right outside of the Bills locker room entrance. And I believe at one point somebody told me Ed Oliver came into the mix as well. But you could take a look at all these videos. They're all up there. And you mentioned the quote from Deion. I tweeted that as well. He said he just doesn't like those guys. And he said, I'm a humble guy, but I'm not a fan of the Jets. Very disrespectful players. It's what it is. And when we could run and pass and beat a team like that, cool. Thumbs up. He also said, Ryan, which I thought was interesting. So the Jets defensive line coach, let me look this up real quick. His name is Aaron Whitecotton. He was a defensive assistant on the Bills from, I think, 17 to 19. So he crossover with Dawkins. Dawkins specifically mentioned him when talking about how this whole deal happened. And he said he doesn't like him either.
Wow, that's something, because you're right. I remember that name. When as soon as you said it, he was with the Bills there for a short stint. So to specifically call him out too is something else. And these two teams won't see each other again this year, but I'm sure that chippiness will remain in 2024 and beyond.
So you're not predicting a Jets playoff run? So
I am not. I think Aaron Rodgers' comeback is going to wait until 2024. I guess it's dependent on the Jets being in the playoff picture, and I don't see that being a possibility.
Yeah, he said it's probably. I asked him if it's a defense that's used to like dominating offenses, and maybe that frustration is what led to the chippiness. And he said it's probably anger, a little bit of a lot of emotions. There's a lot of emotional guys over there, very emotional guys. Like even their D line coach, very emotional, unmanly, just very emotional guys. Direct shots, man. I mean,
Yeah, I would
that's
say
pretty
so.
because Deion Dawkins is usually like the snowman, all fun, but
Right.
he can flip that switch and he gets really super competitive and he doesn't stand for kind of some of that stuff.
No, he does not. So yeah, I mean, definitely got chippy in game and then after the game as well.
So let's get into the injuries here, Ryan.
Mm.
Before we do, though, I have to tell everybody to become a Shout Buffalo Bills insider. A little story. So we have a bunch of outstanding insiders that we interact with on the daily. Me and you answer questions. We send out like some of our thoughts, our takes, insider stuff that there's a lot of stuff I put on there that I don't even put on social media. I never have. It's a different form of like connection to our fans. Mike Taylor and Mark Burchard, I think I'm pronouncing his last name, insiders since the beginning. And they both hit me up on the insider text line and said, hey, we're coming into town. Are you guys doing a Wingnuts event? And I said, no, we're not. We couldn't get a date lined up, which speaking of which, the next one is December 2nd. And so I said, oh man, we were going to go to Wingnuts. I think we're going to go to Wingnuts anyway. And so I said, you know what? You're going to Wingnuts. I'll meet you there. So I ended up meeting Mike and his family. Caitlin and the kids came out too. We ate some of the best chicken wings in town with them. I ran into Mark and his wife as well, which was awesome to catch up with them a little bit. But it's just a cool way to connect with fans a little bit more closely. It's a really great time. And you can sign up to become a Shout Insider right now at 716-528-6727. That's 716-528-6727. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call at 716-852-1234. That's 852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. Ryan, the Bills lost 3 defensive backs in this game. Scary situation that played out with Taylor Rapp needing his face mask removed after a hit to the head, neck, shoulder area. It was hard to really tell what specifically happened. The Bills announced it as a neck injury. He was placed on a backboard. They put him on the ambulance. He's now at home, which is really, really good news. But at the time he got the hit, popped up, and then he kind of like wilted back down to his knees. It seemed like it was a neck kind of like shoulder area situation. It was a really good pop on Breece Hall, who is an absolute monster of a runner. I thought at one point he hit Micah Hyde, I think, on a play, and I thought he was kind of banged up on a play. Taron Johnson, though, concussion, and then Dane Jackson leaves the game. Christian Benford was able to come in that backup role and finish, but that secondary, man, beat up again all of a sudden.
Yeah, it feels like the same, the same tune that we've been singing all year long. This secondary keeps getting banged up at cornerback and at safety, and they just can't stay healthy. Dane Jackson plays a very physical style and a very solid tackler for that reason, but early on in the game, he goes down with an injury. And, Christian Benford, I think his snaps are going to be somewhat limited in this game. Had Jackson stayed healthy, it was kind of going into it, I saw it described as a, break in case of emergency type situation in regards to his playing time. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And he came out, he almost had an interception at one point. He played a pretty solid brand of football, but obviously of the three, and not trying to downplay the injuries, Taron Johnson obviously is the biggest name involved in who was hurt, because he is so important to this defense and what he does from that nickel cornerback position. So going into next week and into a big time game, you have to hope that he can clear that concussion protocol because replacing him is not easy. I know they have a lot of faith in Cam Lewis and other players on this roster, but he is one of their best defenders just overall in general. So that will be key. As for Taylor Rapp, I think you described it well. Same play as the Taron Johnson injury. They're all kind of attending to Johnson, and all of a sudden you see him up on his feet, go down to like a knee. You could tell that something was wrong, and before you know it, he was the one that he needed to have that ambulance. Luckily, they didn't have to take him to the hospital. He was still in the locker room after halftime. They said on television, and then, like you said, Sean McDermott reported that he believes he's at home now. So all positive signs. You hope that all three of these players are back sooner rather than later.
You said that you said you thought I explained that well, which is cool. Like, it would have been terrible if you said I thought you explained that poorly. Would have really just put me in back me into a corner there.
Well, like the whole like how he wilted after, because he was standing up afterwards after the hit. So
right.
It
kind of reminded me of DeMar a little bit, and it was kind of scary for a moment because the ambulance was out on the field. Every time that happens now, you're always going to kind of get taken back there a little bit. But even just in that sense, like coming up for a second, looking like he was okay, and then going back down. The Taron one to me is the most troublesome, because you think about next week, and if he's in the concussion protocol and isn't able to make his way back. I mean, listen, Cam Lewis, I thought came in, fought like hell, like played a really nice game, a huge opportunity potentially for him, but not even just from a playing perspective. Cam in that role has gotten banged up himself in the past. So it's like, if you're down Taron and then you go to Cam, if he goes down in the game, where do you go from that? This obviously places DeMar Hamlin now. If both of those guys are hurt, it places DeMar Hamlin in a bigger role as well, where he'd actually even might have to come in and play some safety on some of those dime looks. So a lot of moving parts. Dane Jackson, if he's not able to play next week, you have Benford, but you're probably going to have to sign Josh Norman or use the final elevation on Jamarcus Ingram, which I don't think that they'd be willing to do. And one thing I got to find out, remind me this week, if if he reverted back to the Bills practice squad because he cleared waivers. The Bills never updated us on that. So I'm going to try to do some reporting on that this week and figure that out, because if he did, I'm wondering if he now gets a new set of 3 elevations. Do you
From
remember?
my yeah, and I looked into that actually. From my understanding, I believe you do get more elevations once you revert. And what's interesting with him is he is a vested veteran. I was wondering about the whole process and procedure, but it'll be good to get some clarity on that this week. And if that is the case, he would likely be the candidate to get the elevation once again. But something to monitor, and like you said, hoping that all 3 of these defensive backs can get onto the field soon.
And, we're talking here about Christian Benford. We're talking here about Dane Jackson. But who we also have to talk about in this game, Rasul Douglas, 2 interceptions. First time a Bills cornerback has done that since 2019 when Tre'Davious White did it. Just a huge performance and an absolute home run of a trade deadline deal for Brandon Beane, year removed from a whiff, right? Like Nyheim Hines, outside of those kick returns in the Patriots game, and those were, probably worth the deal. I mean, that was a really tough point in the season, and the way that he rallied everybody. He was a good teammate. Who knows what would have been this year if he hadn't been in that accident. But this is a trade of a completely different caliber. I mean, he comes in, Rasul Douglas, and has completely made an impact in 3 games. And, Sean McDermott said he's getting more and more comfortable as they go along. Really big performance today. And I thought in a couple of one-on-one matchups with Garrett Wilson, especially the interception where he jumped the route, I mean, he just outplayed who a lot of people believe is a top-tier wide receiver in this league.
Yeah, outstanding trade for Brandon Beane. You acquire a guy that you have under contract technically next year as well. You get a 5th back for a 3rd round pick in a year where you have you had 2 third rounders. So you're still keeping that day 2 pick, or one of those 2 day 2 picks that you covet so much, and you're getting an impact number 1 cornerback, not just for this year but for next year as well. So great get for the Bills, and he's been playing like it ever since he's been on the field. And limited reps his first game, or limited opportunities, but now he looks like he's comfortable in the system. 2 interceptions. I believe he had the fumble recovery too. Just an unbelievable game from Rasul Douglas, and now going against one of his former teams next week against the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm texting you a question for Wednesday's show that we're going to cover, but I don't want to do it in this episode because this is the reaction show, and I feel like it would be unfair to everybody. And so sometimes I have these ideas, and I'm like, we'll do it on Wednesday, and then I forget about it. So we're not going to do that this time, Ryan. We're gonna really hit it. What else do you want to cover here? Because I feel like there was so much that happened in this game. I thought that the offensive line, we haven't spent a second talking about that unit today. And you look at the holistic just game stats for this one. The Jets finished with a Quinnen Williams sack, is their only sack in the game. And I'm pretty sure it happened on the first offensive drive that ended up forcing them to kick the field goal. The rest of the game, Ryan, 4 quarterback hits. I really truly believe this was an offensive line that just completely dominated that Jets defensive line. This is an absolutely huge piece of this offensive performance. And I think, looking ahead to, the Chris Jones led Chiefs, the Micah Parsons led Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, which you can't even name one guy. They got a bunch of guys up front that are really good. This is a massive performance. And under the radar, what's been happening here is like a huge jump year for Spencer Brown, Deion Dawkins playing like the left tackle he was in 21 again, and then Connor McGovern really being the key ingredient to getting this offensive line to a level of real consistency, especially in pass blocking. But I can't even just say that. They were good in the run game too today.
Yeah, O-line played great. Josh Allen's 1 sack that he took was, I think it was a combination of Allen holding the ball too long. I think he patted the ball 3 times on that play, but also no one being open down the field. It was not a O-line, leaking someone through or letting up instant pressure. So I thought they had an unbelievable game. One area that I would like to focus on, Matt, real quick, is special teams and Reggie
Mm.
Gilliam and how he set the tone early on here for the Bills. You come down, you defer, you kick it off, and he comes down and he hits the hit stick on Gibson, who had that game-winning punt return in the first matchup, causes the fumble. Quentin Morris recovers, second kicker punt downfield or second kick downfield. Again, another big hit by Reggie Gilliam. So this special teams unit was kind of flying all day. Saran Neal had a big play. Still some shaky play from Sam Martin in terms of his punting, but the coverage units looked really good today, and that's been an area that has been a little bit concerning at times this year.
Yeah, honestly, if the game were any closer, I think that we'd probably be spending more time talking about that fake punt that went
Yeah.
for a big gain, and obviously couldn't even went for a bigger gain, and that ended up leading to their only touchdown. And Elena gave me a little shout out on Twitter because we're sitting there and they're going out for the punt team, and I'm like, they're gonna fake this punt. I mean, if you're Robert Saleh and your offense is that inept, you have to do something before halftime. I mean, the Bills get the ball back after halftime. So I just figured, okay, they're going to fake a punt here. Like, it's got to happen here. I was surprised they didn't do it earlier. They ended up faking the punt. You have to be ready for that every single time. That if I could say that, never coaching a game of football like you, Matthew Smiley, you got to be down there and be ready for that. And that's a second straight week where there's been a bit of a special teams gap. And of course, it didn't have a impact on the game. The Bills ran away with this thing, but that's the kind of thing in a close game here, next couple of weeks where every play is going to matter and potentially a close game against some good teams. That can't happen again.
No, I mean, it truly took away Buffalo's ability to double dip. I know that they were able to get it close to midfield with the limited time they had left, but the Jets were able to pretty much control the clock late in the second quarter. After that fake punt, they were able to benefit from, I believe, a personal foul penalty too on that drive. So little things like that worked into their favor, and it prevented the Bills from being able to have a longer extended drive right before half, and then get the ball back in the third quarter and maybe put the game away even earlier than it was. Although this one never really felt close, even with that touchdown score, even with the Bills just up 16-6 at halftime. But you're right. I mean, that is one plan, special teams, where they need to be better. They need to be prepared for that, knowing that the Jets were a desperate team whose offense just simply was not working whatsoever, not just this week, but overall this season with Zach Wilson at the helm.
Yeah, it wasn't working, but what's going to be working this week is the Tops Friendly Markets mobile app, and you can use it to get all of your Thanksgiving shopping done in an instant. Download the Tops Markets mobile app and get the most out of your shopping experience. Check out all the amazing benefits you have at the palm of your hand. Select your preferred store, browse and shop the weekly ad, or by specific department. Easily locate products at your preferred store with its built-in aisle directory. Enjoy contactless shopping with Tops Grocery Pickup or delivery service. Clip digital coupons directly to your Tops Bonus Plus card. It's easy to download. You can get it in the App Store or Google Play, the Apple App Store or Google Play. Get it today. Get yourself all set up for Thanksgiving. Are you ready for Thanksgiving, Ryan?
As ready as one can be. We haven't been home the past 2 years, so this is going to be different, Matt.
I know. We can't go to Detroit this year, which, gosh, I'd never seen a guy's face light up more when told that he get to skip Thanksgiving and go to Detroit. I still am just befuddled about it a year later.
Yeah, I understand. I will say New Orleans was definitely the better of the two, and Detroit left a lot to be desired. But it's always good to be, these big time games with America watching, having the Bills involved. So it was definitely fun, despite having to spend Thanksgiving in Detroit 1 year ago.
He's Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. This has been the post-game edition. Bills 32, Jets 6. Something bad's going to happen for this team here in the next couple of weeks. He's Ryan. I'm Matt. We'll see you next time. Wednesday, Staples Show. Take care.